So, an Armory deck for Aurora is coming in March, and I'll be honest, this one did surprise me a bit. That said, I will absolutely take it, because there's certainly some logic in being able to progress from First Strike to Armory and then grow beyond. And I'm also excited to see what new tools the deck brings, both from a meta standpoint, and perhaps even more importantly, if there are decent equipment backfills for some expensive meta staples. So today, let's talk about this one, from spoilers to what this deck needs to do to be successful on all fronts. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Now, Aurora, I don't think that this is a highly likely one to see, primarily because they have the First Strike pipeline. And there's arguments for and against it to that you could buy the First Strike and then buy the CC deck. The fact that she's in First Strike and then supported in Rosetta, I don't know that we'll see, right? Just being realistic from like a tactic standpoint, I don't know that we'll see an Aurora one. That said, I would really like to see her get one. So there you have it, folks. I was really hopeful to see this, but I wasn't really optimistic given the environment. But hey, come March 14th, which is not that far away, by the way, we do have an Aurora Armory deck. Now, at this point, we've seen 2 of the pieces coming in the deck likely within the next 1 to 2 weeks. We'll probably see maybe 3 weeks as it may be. We'll see the rest of the pieces. And this is going to be very make or break, I think, not for the deck itself, but I think it's going to tell us a lot about a lot of things. And happy Flesh and Blood Monday, by the way. Welcome to the channel. Thanks for checking in. I do appreciate it. So today I want to talk, yes, about this, and we'll talk about spoilers and some of the impact there. But more so, I really want to talk about what I think this deck needs to land. And I think it's going to tell us a lot, to be honest, about a lot of other things. And just stick with me. I'll kind of explain what I mean as I go, or at least I hope to do so. So first off, when this came out, there was some initial pushback on it. It's like, wait a minute, from around the community, I mean, right? It's like, wait a minute, why is, a meta hero, because Aurora's pretty good, right? Like, she's a pretty legit contender within the meta, doing pretty well. Why is a meta hero getting support when all the others aren't? My hero, insert my hero here, what, right? You get it. And I mean, first off, there's a couple things, not likely, almost certainly this was in the pipeline prior to Rosetta's release. So, kind of as I mentioned in the thing, there's a logical progression for buying a First Strike and then buying the Armory deck and then, right, starting to trick it out. It makes sense, especially if it's a hero that's, a tier 1.5 edged S tier, whatever. I'm not saying that she's S tier right now. I'm just saying she's an edge top tier hero, right? At the very least right now. So I think there's a lot of logic in that from an entry standpoint and painting the progression. She was also number 2 on my Learn and Grow for 2025, which I'm not saying that factored into Ellis's decision. It didn't at all, because this was obviously well in the pipeline. But there's a lot of advantages to this, despite the fact that I do think some of if you come at the feedback from the standpoint of Armory decks are here to buff underperforming heroes, then I think that there's right to be butthurt. But I do think that there's a little flaw in that logic, although, if you look at the ones we've gotten, I think it's reasonable to come to that conclusion. Well, with the exception of Kayo, perhaps in Kayo's time, but either way. So there was my point here is there was some pushback. I think some of the complaints are valid, but I think that the net positive of what this is at least trying to do from First Strike progression from an intro standpoint, I think there's a lot of solid arguments there. And again, I'm inherently biased. I love this hero. I loved this hero before she even came out because of the entry levelness of it, and I think this speaks to that. So I obviously have an inherent bias, and I respect both sides of the coin. I do. All right, so now let's go into the spoilers. So we have 2 spoilers at this point. So we have Skyward Serenade, which lets you choose 2 of its 3 options. Remember, of course, you can only choose, in a card like this, the basic rule in Flesh and Blood is you can only choose one mode once, right? So you would have to choose 2 of these modes, but I think you would want to anyway. So this is Yellow blocks 2, pretty much standard. Yellow, I think, is kind of fitting right in with Aurora's thing. But you can either create an embodiment of lightning, search your deck for a Skizzik, banish it, and then shuffle, which then you can play this turn. Or your next attack gets +1, and that's, of course, it has Go Again. And then Skizzik has been revealed to, if it has Go Again, it gets +1. But this is a red 0/3, blocks 3 as lightning, which is actually very, very, very hot. Very hot. And functionally, if you were to create the embodiment and then tutor this out, right, which is the basic play from Skizzik, assuming you didn't have anything else in your queue, this could come in for 4 goes, which is basically right on line with what she wants to do. Again, remember, this is a fusible card that blocks 3, which is a pretty big deal. And these are really good cards. Now, kind of talking about them, it is interesting because I really like, personally, I really like my Aurora deck where it is now. There's not too many holes in it that if I was like, oh, these 6 cards, and that's assuming she doesn't get anything else. Historically, it would be likely to assume that there's maybe one other card in there. Maybe. We will see. Right? But it's going to be very interesting to see how we build the deck because, again, I'd gone on record in the past saying I felt her kit was incomplete. I do think these help, but now that I have to conceptualize what it's going to look like within my deck that I'm playing today, which I really like, I'm like, oh man, I've got to go change my deck and fit these in. I don't have to, but it would be wise to do so. And I'm not exactly sure right now what the swaps will be. So that's pretty cool. Now, moving First Strike to CC, and I want to acknowledge this bleeds into the next part of this discussion, which is what this deck needs to do to be successful. And I will even go in so far, I'll just say it, what this deck needs to do to not make the Armory deck line fail. I know that's a big statement, but just stick with me and I hope I'll explain myself well. So what we're doing right now, or what LSS is doing with this right now is this coming out, right? So we had First Strike that hit, a month and change before, maybe 2 months before Rosetta. Then Rosetta was there to support one half of the First Strike. And now we have a CC deck that will support that line, right? So there's a natural progression there. Either one of them you can pick up, go back to Rosetta for Aurora. That's pretty awesome. So that natural progression is there. I do think that's a good thing. I am buying this deck not only because I love her, but I'm going to take, probably the cards I need out of it, backfill them, and they're going to my wife. And if she never picks it up again, then so be it. I got the cards I needed. So be it. But I am hoping that this works. All right. So this is fulfilling something that I personally had wanted to do. And I think that fits with that progression. So I think that this is really a good thing. Now, let's move into the next part. With the caveat of, if this is so good that it appears, right, we have the whole Kayo argument over again of, right, it's an intro product, but again, you're counting on existing players to buoy it because you have good cards in there. So if it's not on the shelves, then it's not serving that purpose. And then you have the writ, let's say, I think the Kayo deck's actually a really good analogy here, right? What happened, Kayo deck right now is an $80 deck, right? If you try to find it online, because of what it has in it. And so let's say 3-4 months down the road, someone's like, oh, I did find a First Strike deck, which by the way, aren't super prevalent, at least right now, at least in my area. So let's say somebody does find a First Strike. They're like, you know what? I want to go buy the Armory deck. I'm like, wait, that's an $80 deck now? So there's a little bit of risk there, but that is secondary market stuff and looking forward. So I will acquiesce that point. So let's go to the next part here. If this deck does not contain the First Strike staples, and by that specifically I mean Sizzle and Photon Rush to a lesser extent, but Static Shock, I think this deck will fail. And in its purpose, not to sell. It's going to sell fine. It's not going to be a failed product from a income standpoint. But I think that this deck will not only fail to do what it wanted to do, but I think it will also show us what the Armory deck line and how LSS was approaching these products. I think it will really be very telling. So as we're all very aware, the First Strike decks are Blitz, and they contain some really good cards like Sizzle and Static Shock that Aurora, at least today, plays 3 of. Which means that everyone who wants to bring Aurora to a Classic Constructed tournament needs to buy 1.5 of these First Strike decks, right? It's no surprise to everyone out there that these First Strike decks disappeared off the shelves, or at least originally, right? Maybe your region has them, mine still doesn't. But either way, you get my point. Okay, so even ignoring the past, let's look only forward. Only forward. Someone picks up a Aurora CC deck, and they look back and they're like, oh, I need these cards, Sizzle and Static Shock at the very least. I need these cards to build my deck the way I want. I have to go buy 2 First Strike decks in order to fill that out. You see where I'm going with this, right? That is a very bad taste. I believe that is a very bad taste in a consumer's mouth. So if this deck does not contain those, I do think that's a problem. That is my personal opinion. You can let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. But, and to be clear, if this comes out and it includes those, that is going to leave a bad taste in all of the people's mouth who went back and bought 2 First Strike decks. So either way, not great. But if we're approaching this as a go to your armory, pick this up, play, and build out, if you have a brand new player come in, pick this up, and then they immediately turn around and realize that they have to go buy 2 of the same product that they don't need, they're going to be like, this is a predatory practice, and I don't want to be part of this game. That is what I think. If I'm just channeling myself. If I was in the same situation, I would not be pleased about that. So rant over. Hopefully I've painted my point. If this deck comes with 3 copies, heck, come with 1 copy. In fact, maybe that's the play. Maybe you come with 1 copy of Sizzle, 1 copy of Static Shock. That would actually be a brilliant play. I would actually be okay with that, right? But if this doesn't come with any, I think it's a miss. I do. I think it's a miss. Now, the next part of this, the bonus part, is this is a perfect opportunity for some legitimate Stepstone equipment. What I mean, if you go out and you look at Aurora's kit, she's got the Lightning Legendary boots. No one in the world, no reasonable person expects there to be a legitimate backfill for the Legendary boots, right? Those things are awesome. They have a B1, they've got Battle Worn, they do the thing. It's all, that's a perfect stepping stone to, go buy this set. You can get this, make some plays. No one's asking for a backfill. Heck, could be Snapdragon Scalers. That'd be perfect. But what we could look at is a good headpiece. And it doesn't have to be good, but like a legitimate headpiece, legitimate fist, arms, and a legitimate chest. Because Grasp of the Arknight is extremely expensive, right? Some people do play Malice, which is not all that expensive, right? And to be fair, maybe Malice could be in there. But again, remember, historically, we've seen a new kit with these decks. So I do expect to see that. I don't expect this to deviate. So, your boots probably no better than Snappies. But for the head and the chest piece and the arms, seeing something that's like, it's not going to be Grasp, and it's not going to be Dyadic, right? And you're probably not going to have the AB flexibility. No one's asking for that, but it does need to be legitimate enough that someone doesn't have to look and be like, oh, I need Grasp so bad that I'm, I don't know, whatever it is today, 100, 150, 80, whatever it is today, right? But you get my point, right? And the same goes for all the other pieces, right? Eventually, that's the point. Eventually you want them to graduate into that, but it needs to not be like so delta. Because you look at Boltyn, Boltyn actually gained by picking up some of those equipment. Azalea gained by picking up some of those equipment, at least on certain playstyles. And I would really like, if we look at the head slot, I'd love to see a new head slot for Aurora. I think it'd be super cool. So anyway, that's my thought on the must-haves. I mean, the first is almost like oh no, you didn't, because if it doesn't, I think that's really bad on a lot of levels. For the equipment, obviously the point is to come in and upgrade. right? You want something that's like legitimate and you don't need to like drop $400 out of the gate. That's what you want, but you want the promise of having to upgrade. And I think that's exactly what we want. So we'll hold on the equipment. Those will probably come within the next 1 to 2 weeks. But again, if we don't get some of those first strike backfills, I think we have a legitimate problem. Either way, I don't want to end this on a negative note because I am very excited for this. I think that, not only is it going to like show us the future and kind of show us the thermometer on where we plan to go in the future with these decks, but this is establishing a clear pipeline, which I think is like really solid. So as long as Aurora doesn't LL within like the next year or so, which right now doesn't, with the new set coming out, doesn't seem super likely, I think we're in a good spot. So I'm certainly picking up one of these. I've already got the pre-order in. Can't wait for it. Let me know if you're excited or not, but more importantly, let me know if you agree or disagree. Hopefully you have already. Either way, thanks for watching. Happy Monday, and go Commando.